I'm teaching on two things. They're connected, but I'm going to start with this one first. Talk about the power of intention. What does that mean, you think, the power of intention? What does intention mean?
Hey, this is Blake Sloan. I've been selling real estate over 14 years. Our team of highly trained professionals, along with our unmatched marketing, has sold thousands of homes here in the Myrtle Beach area, and this is how we do it.
Plan to do something. What else? There's an importance of, as humans, how we set intentions. Expectations. What else?
What you want to happen.
What I want to happen. Right? What else? Well, how do you consider it has something to do with being mindful? What does mindful mean? Right? Being aware of what I'm going to get. One of the things we used to do at Warrior when we got there, they take it to the top of this mountain. You had to declare what your intention was for that week. And it's very hard for me to do. And everybody else is clear their intention, what they need to get out of the week. And I tend to be there a little bit later and be one of the last ones. And one time for a certified trainer, they were going to send me home if I didn't set my clear intention of what it was. And it really taught me something, because when I set the intention, what do you think happened? The outcome that I actually set happened. Why? Clear on, folks. What else? There's deeper meaning to that. Subconscious mind. There's two things here. You have the conscious mind and subconscious mind. So subconscious mind is what? Our supercomputer. Talked about that. That's what really is 90% of your brain power. Okay, the subconscious mind is a supercomputer that we have. It's our AI, it's our artificial intelligence. It's what we have that helps us really do all the things that we do, from breathing to your heart beating to all these things happen, and then have the conscious. And so one of the things that setting intentions does is it creates this alignment, it creates this assignment. The assignment is for your subconscious mind to get an outcome. And so what happens is when I set the intention, my subconscious mind has no really other way to do but just to make that happen in most cases. Now, the more I practice this, the better it gets. But subconsciously, that's the power of setting intentions, having daily affirmations, things like that. But setting intentions control my subconscious. And so what it does, it sets out to make that true. The key things I do here is I need to make that in present tense, because my mind needs to be able to make that up. Right? So present tense, and obviously the way that I did it. Okay? So for example, let's say I set an intention, right? You say things like, I'm a non-smoker versus I quit smoking. Right? A non-smoker is who I am now in this scenario. Okay? I want to talk about why this is important and really break it down where we're messing up a lot at, because I see this happen. So the subconscious is a supercomputer we have. I noticed a lot, and I think I had a couple notes here I was going to talk about. On average, we make 35,000 decisions a day. 95% of our daily decisions take place in the subconscious mind. And so for that, one of the things that we're missing out here on a success level, and the most successful people do, is they lean on their subconscious mind to be able to help get the outcome that they want. Okay? And so this is what I want you to be able to master and understand, is like, what's the talk and the items that I am doing in my subconscious, and why does that matter overall for what I do? Okay? Has anybody here really messed around with AI and Chat GPT? Right? What's the key to getting successful things out of Chat GPT? Specific in what? In your prompts. The most successful thing to get what you want out of Chat GPT is to get better at your prompts. There's people who are selling prompts online right now to be able to utilize Chat GPT. And so what happens is a prompt is the same exact thing for your supercomputer as it is for AI. The problem most people in here, why they're not successful and they don't get what they want to get done, the reason you set you know you want to be successful in the week, but you don't get it done what you know you need to get done, is because you're not good at doing what? Setting up the right prompts. Okay, and it's very, very important to understand that. I'm going to teach that in the second half, but what I want you guys to understand is you have to be able to understand, how do I program my subconscious mind? And there's a way that even Brian Tracy teaches this thing called short-circuiting it. And the way you short-circuit that is, I set a weekly intention in terms of what I'm getting done that week, and then that morning I create a daily intention of what that is. And so let's say that I get up that morning and I set a actual intention verbally or even written down that says, hey, I'm going to be much more happier and experience more joy today. If I do that in the morning, am I more likely or less likely to get that feeling of joy? More likely. Why? I'm focused on that, and I set the intention. Okay, and so the key here is really for us to make sure that we're dialing in on that and we're having that data, which is super important. But I want to make sure that when you do so, when you set the intention, it increases focus and momentum, right? It's the way that your subconscious mind has to deliver this piece here. And I have this written in my notes in the second part I'll talk about in a second. But setting intention, simply instructing the unconscious mind, unconscious brain with a statement, goal, or question to frame up or set up an event or time. Its setup tool was used to seek a solution just like any other setup tool, which is just like what? Chat GPT and the prompts. And so I want you guys to understand one of the things that we're really failing on is setting clear intentions for ourselves, both weekly and in the daily. Why is that? Because we have to be able to hold ourselves accountable to having that daily and weekly intention. Now, what's one of the ways that we can really do that? If you had to simplify this for me to be able to do this at the highest level and really master and hack my mind and understand the power of my subconscious mind, the power of my AI, and utilize this, what can I do each week to do so? What will my prompts be like? Let's say I create my prompt, right? And my prompt in real estate on your side. I want to get good at setting prompts, correct? So what's my number one prompt, what I want each week? I want to get a contract, right? So I want to set a contract. That's the most important thing for the buyer side. If I set one contract a week, that's 52. Let's say I have an 80% close ratio. I close 40 plus deals. I made $200,000. Easily. That's what the average sale price is. Not great. If you get it even higher, you'll make over $200,000, right? And so the reality is that's net in your pocket, one contract a week. And so my goal is, how do I set that prompt every single week on the fly? People aren't understanding the power of the subconscious mind. They're not understanding how to use this tool that we have, and they don't really understand the why behind it, which is why I wanted to kind of teach this today. Right? What the power of setting your and then we do this every week in Warrior. Every Sunday I do this thing called General's Tent. What I do is I review the previous week, what happened, and I compare that to my quarterly goal and my monthly goal that we have now. And then what do you think the first thing we do after I look at that is? It's a Sunday. Set my intention for the next week. Okay, for me it's going to be implementing different things. I have all these things on my plate. But the reality is what happens is most people come in without getting clear and setting an actual prompt for their AI, for the actual mind. And so what do you think happens the first thing on Monday? They don't have a clear intention. And then what happens on Monday? What happens typically to everybody on Monday? What happens when you get work? You have things are going to be great. You had a great weekend. You come in Monday morning. You're feeling pretty good. Then what usually happens with Murphy's Law, with life, with real estate? Shit hits the fan. Things go wrong. Then automatically what happens is people move right to reactionary mode versus staying on course in terms of what the actual intention was the entire time. And so Brian Tracy calls this, I set myself a track. So I have a track and I have a plan. And what happens when I run a track around at school, whatever? What happens when you run a track at school? You remember how many laps is a mile? 4, right? Never forget that my whole life. So the reality is, what this does and setting its intention does, it helps me short circuit my brain so that when the craziness comes, the issues comes, I automatically am able to hold myself to the subconscious plan that I set in motion in my mind, which allows my mind to keep running what? The track. And so the problem most of you all and most of anybody as any human is once they have this good intention that's not truly set with an actual prompt, they just say, well, I want to get a contract this week. They don't really break down the how behind it and have something to hold themselves accountable to. What happens is the very minute that something happens, hits in the face, they just keep running off the track and they go do something else. Like what? Like deal with a home inspection, deal with a crazy client, deal with whatever these issues are before sticking to what needs to be done and making sure that that happens first. I'm going to explain this in a minute too and how Brian Tracy breaks it down in some of his disciplines, but it's very important for us to understand, am I setting a clear prompt for my subconscious mind every single Monday? Am I using that to set my daily intention, which is my daily prompt for my mind, every single day based on that? Does that make sense? And the key here is I have to make sure I do this one thing. I have to write it down. Why? There's a power that goes from the mind to the hand from me actually taking it down, writing it physically, and having to actually look at it. And so what a lot of people tend to do is they use the same thing on a Google Doc or same thing on the Word doc, and they just screenshot that shit and leave it on the computer and don't look at it ever again until the next Monday. What's the problem with that? I can't hold myself accountable from a mindset standpoint in terms of what it is. And so I want you guys to understand the simplicity, but also the power in what this is. And I'll break it down in these 6 disciplines in a minute. But I was unsure which part do I teach first, right? Do I teach this part first or the other part first? But I want you guys to understand your mind is your own AI. And as I see the correlation, obviously they're trying to make AI be just like human intelligence, right? And what happens is the better your prompts are, the more specific your prompts are, the better the artificial intelligence returns back to you. It's the same exact thing when you're dealing with human intelligence on that side. And so once you understand the power of what this is, you short circuit your mind. You take time every single Sunday, or the worst case scenario, Monday morning, and I set my clear intention. For the buyer side team or the general brokers team, my goal is what? 1 contract. Then I back that up daily with my daily items that has to happen. And so what we did is we reverse engineer what prompts have to happen in that period for me to be able to get one thing under contract, right? So in essence, it used to be 500 dials, whatever your number is. And my number one thing is going to be dials. Why? Why is dials number 1 on there, you think? Okay, what else? It's the most controllable thing that you have. So my dials is the most controllable item, which is why it's number 1. And so that's why it's number 1, because every day when I set my daily intention, I got to make sure I'm going in and looking at my dials and understand, here's what I can control today regardless of what happens. And so the reality is, we know real estate's a long-term sales cycle. The more I'm consistent in this, the more my business is going to be consistent on the back end. Okay, and so what most people do is they make this mistake, especially in the beginning, is you have 1 or 2 deals going on, you're desperate, you have this one person who comes in and wants to look at property, and what do? Drop everything, go show the property, instead of continuing to fill your long-term bucket. And once you get to 100 in the bucket, and you continually move the 100, and you kind of continually have them, then all of a sudden you have more, really, I guess you'd say prosperity in the bucket that brings you more stuff. And so no matter what, you have to make sure you're setting the daily intention, and you have to make sure you're sticking to this every single day. But I want you to understand, I have to have a weekly prompt for my mind that controls my AI, or in this scenario, my HI, which stands for what? Human intelligence, to make sure I prompt my brain. And you look at how the subconscious brain works, if you study this a lot, it's a massive, massive difference. The problem most people is they don't ever tap into the subconscious mind, the power of it, okay? And if I have any goal here is for you to understand and start tapping into that and start reading about the subconscious mind. Start watching YouTube videos about the subconscious mind. They're very, very powerful, okay? And that's how people get to, there's other thing I'll talk about in a minute that's called the super subconscious mind. And that's how you get these great ideas and great things that you don't really understand, because you're able to get rid of the noise and you have this inner voice inside of you that guides you in what you need to do, right? That's called the super subconscious. A lot of people call it God and certain things, but there's this part of us that you access once you get rid of the noise, and the better you get at accessing that, the more powerful things you have. If you read the book Law of Success, which is now also Think and Grow Rich, they talk about this thing called infinite intelligence. It's in the book. Guess what that is? Your subconscious mind. And it's the power of your subconscious mind, which is why the richest, most wealthiest people in the world have learned to access the power of the subconscious mind. Okay? So this is like the super level, high level, or low level summary for you guys in that scenario. So, second thing we have to talk about here is what? Agreements. Why is that? The most important reason I do dials is to meet with people and do what? Have them sign agency agreements. Now, for listing partners, that number is going to change. For my inside sales, those numbers are going to be different. I have those already predetermined for you anyways. The goal of what this is how do I simplify all the crazy shit in real estate so that you can just use your subconscious mind and part of your conscious mind to understand how I can just break down and really measure what I have. Now, here's what's wrong with people not turning in on Friday. What is it? I don't know and measure myself against the thing that matters the most, which is what? Results. Right? The only thing we care about here in our organization is not feelings, it's not certain other things, it's what? Results. And so I have to be able to stand in the fire and hold myself accountable to my actual results and measure that. And actually be able to turn that in and understand, okay, over time, I can look at these numbers and break this down. It gamifies the game of real estate so I can understand what am I doing or not doing wrong or doing right in that process. Does that make sense for you guys there? which is super important for me to understand. Now, the reason I want agency agreements is because I can do what? It pushes me to push for what? Appointments. So a lot of people can get lazy and just talk non-locals all the time and not ask when they're coming in town, not book appointments. And so the agency agreements piece is designed for me to do what? Get more aggressive and ask for appointments, both local and non-locals, in a virtual and things like that, because this is what works ideally. I know if I get 3 agency agreements a week and I do that for long enough, what's going to happen up the top? Eventually I'm going to get contracts and get 1 a week if I can do that. Okay? And if I'm good enough at closing people the right way, this is less than 50%, right? So if I'm getting 3 a week, mathematically, and I do this long enough, I should easily be able to get 1 under contract every single week. Okay? On the listing side, the goal is to get at least what? At least 2, no matter what. And ideally right now, I probably need to do 3. But that's super important for us to understand in that scenario. And I have these other ones broken down for inside sales too. But you guys both have inside sales. Your numbers, your things will be a little different, where listing side, right? He's at least 3 new listings. I maybe bumped it up to 4. You call X current sellers, which is for what? Why would you call current sellers? Price reduction, exactly right. The next goal is what per week? 4 price reductions per week. And the last one is called X previous leads and appointments, which is to what? Get my missed ones I didn't get in that scenario. Right? For my goal for inside sales, I want to have X appointments held a week, which means I have to do what? Book X amount of appointments, make X amount of dials, send X amount of text messages, and I rebook X amount of appointments. Okay? It's very simple, but it's all gamified and simplified. This right here, number 3, is what? 60% of my bucket. Why is that? Because if I do that every week, I'm going to eventually be talking to roughly, the initial process was, the goal is you would be calling your bucket ideally every other week, right? Every 2 weeks you'd be calling the people in your bucket, okay? We bumped it up to 60 as the market shifted a little bit, because you have to really up this because competition is much higher than it was. Okay, people are calling the buckets more often. Other agents are calling your leads, and so you got to be able to, basically compete with that. The 4th one we made is a freestyle. This will be called to seed money, right? These are options that you can have that you can basically be able to do certain things that you have there. Does that make sense? And so what I know is I have this piece here set on Monday. I'm setting a prompt for my subconscious mind, because guess what happens? If I do this and I print it out and I put it on my desk, and I write it on there, and I have my information in here of what it needs to be, and I put the date up top, what is that doing to my subconscious mind? It's setting a deadline, and it's setting a prompt for my subconscious mind to understand it needs to make this happen in this process. And so this is something we haven't really taught too much on, but I think it's very, very important for you guys to understand what this does in terms of a hack for your brain and what it does. Now, I take the weekly, and every morning I get here and I look at this, and I plan my day. Brian Tracy talks about for every 1 minute spent in planning brings you 10 minutes, 10x return. 1 minute spent on planning saves you 10 minutes of execution on the back end. Why is that? And I've done this a million times. If I don't have a very specific plan for the day, what do you think I end up doing? Some bullshit reactionary stuff. I'm responding to emails that don't matter. I'm dealing with problems that don't matter, and I'm not creating and moving the organization forward because I'm just doing whatever reactionary thing fills the void or fills that. Most of the time, what it fills it with is reactionary items that don't get you paid. It goes back to what we talked a couple weeks ago, right? The most important quadrants, okay? What's the most important quadrant? Important but not urgent, right? And so I break these down in my quadrants. What this does is this forces you to do what? Focus on the items that are here, that are important, but not urgent. If I don't have a clear intention for that day and for that week, where do you think my time ends up going subconsciously? Urgent, not important, or urgent, important. The problem is it creates a switch in the priorities. And no matter how well we say that we don't do it, we all do it. I've been doing this for 18 years, right? And guess what? I get sucked into it just as easy as anyone else. And so what I want you to understand is this is your game plan. This is my prompt weekly to my AI. And then I have to look at that physically. I want you guys to understand, I want to print this out. And the reason is I have it on my desk with a deadline up top so that I can look at, hey, I have this deadline by this date. I'm going to do what? And when I read that out to myself in that weekly and I look at it, what does that tell my subconscious mind? That needs to be done, right? I'm going to read this part. I'm going to go ahead really quick and read this part of what he talks about. But the reality here, I think, is super important to look at, understand what the subconscious mind does. It just talks about this piece of how it works. It says, when you give your subconscious mind a command in the present tense that's contrary to your current situation, your subconscious mind goes to work to resolve the dynamic tension and make your external reality, right, in alignment with your command. And so what happens is, as I create this external reality that I know I stick with and I take a picture on my phone and then send to the group, right, I have this piece here, and what I do is I can simplify all the noise and go to my what? My next highest activity. And I'll teach you this in a minute, is that part of doing your day daily is I prioritize the 80-20 rule. What are the 20% of items that bring me 80% of results in my business? And what this does, it forces you to set your intention daily to what my 80-20 items are, and I can focus my energy the most on the 20% of items that bring 80% of return.